This week, match number 11 from WrestleWar, May 17th, 1992, from the Jacksonville Memorial Coliseum in Jacksonville, Florida. Sting Squadron. Sting, Barry Windham, Ricky Steamboat, Nikita Koloff, and Dustin Rhodes against the Dangerous Alliance, Rick Rude, Arn Anderson, Stunning Steve Austin, Larry Zbyszko, and Bobby Eaton in a War Games match. Probably the greatest War Games match that I have ever seen. And that includes the first one, back in 87. I did see that one. Actually, I watched that one about a month and a half ago. And the first one I reviewed in this countdown, because this is the second War Games match in this countdown. The first one was the year before this one. That was pretty damn awesome, too. But I would give the edge to this one. 2 rings, side by side, surrounded by one giant cage. 2 men start for their respective teams. Then comes the coin toss. Whichever team wins, they then alternate one member every 2 minutes until everybody is in, and then it becomes submission or surrender, or as they call it, the match beyond. Before then, no pinfalls, no submissions. Match can't end until everybody is in. If you want to know how loaded this match was, I was looking at the lineup here. 6 WWE Hall of Famers, including Sting, who's going in soon. And I put Medusa in there, too. She was outside the cage with Paul Heyman. Really, it should be 7 Hall of Famers with Rick Rude. He should already be in the Hall of Fame. There's no good reason for him not to be. Hopefully they will correct that error in the very near future. I talked about the Dangerous Alliance on last week's podcast. They were awesome, but they did not last nearly as long as they probably should have. They really had one dominant year in WCW, and then they started to fall apart. They were feuding with Sting at the time. He was the world champion. Rick Rude had the U.S. title. Windham had just beaten Steve Austin to win the television title. And the two of them started the match. Now, if you remember in the War Games match from WrestleWar 91 that we talked about, Barry Windham was the heel. Brian Pillman busted him wide open about 2 minutes into the match. Here, Windham is the babyface, and he busts Austin open within the first 2 minutes of the match. So I thought that was kind of cool. By the way, before the match started, Heyman was outside the ring with everybody. He was planning strategy. Apparently he had stuff written down on paper like a football coach. These guys are running plays. I miss managers. So Windham ended up bleeding as well. So did Arn. I think almost everybody in the match, except maybe Ricky Steamboat and Larry Zbyszko, ended up bloody. It looked like a crime scene in there by the end of this thing. This was a violent match. Not like CZW violent, but old school NWA violent. Medusa grabbed Heyman's giant cell phone, took her shoes off midway through the match, climbed up to the top of the cage. She dropped the phone into the cage. Arn Anderson caught it. He nailed Dustin Rhodes in the face with it. Sting, who was out there, he had busted up ribs thanks to Vader. He climbed up onto the top of the cage to chase Medusa away, so that was a fun visual. He chased her back down the side of the cage. Nikita Koloff entered last for Sting's team. Sting got in there second to last. Nikita was last. This was interesting. They sort of played up whether or not Nikita could be trusted. Sting was down in the corner at one point. Nikita reached down to pull him up. Sting looked skeptical. Then as they're talking, Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko, you could see them in the background. They go to attack Sting from behind. Koloff shoves Sting out of the way, and he takes the bullet for him. I want to give WCW credit for some storyline continuity here, because it's almost non-existent in wrestling today, or WWE at least. I definitely don't want to say there's no continuity in Lucha Underground. Ring of Honor, I think, probably is pretty good at that too. WWE is, generally speaking, absolutely awful at that kind of thing. So I want to give WCW credit for it here. The problem is neither one of the announcers, not Jim Ross, not Jesse Ventura, brought up the fact that it was exactly 1 year ago that Sting and Lex Luger wrestled the Steiners at that first Super Bowl, which is another match that was featured in this countdown. In fact, I think I talked about that match about 2 weeks ago, so it's still fresh in my mind. If you remember, in that match, Koloff ran down with a chain wrapped around his hand. Chain was intended for Lex Luger. Sting saw him coming. He shoved Luger out of the way, and Koloff hit Sting with the chain, which cost them the match. So here, they basically repeated the spot, but it was Koloff saving Sting. Nice little bit of continuity. But again, Jesse Ventura's on commentary going, "Why? I don't understand. Why are Sting and Koloff beefing with each other? They're partners, aren't they?" That's what he said. And JR never pointed out any of what I just talked about to him. So I'm not even sure if he remembered that. So it's a nice memory on whoever booked that spot. Maybe it was just the two of them, but whoever it was never clued the announcers in on what was going on. Rude and Zbyszko, they had been fucking around for a while with the top rope, trying to take it apart. It's almost like they were trying to undo it. They were trying to unscrew one of the steel beams. Eventually, they did get it off. The rope was still attached to it, but it looked like a giant wrench. It was this long steel beam. So anyway, Zbyszko had it in his hand. He went to go hit Sting with it. Right? Bobby Eaton's got Sting hooked. He goes to hit Sting. Sting moves out of the way, and Zbyszko hits Eaton in the shoulder with it instead. Sting put Eaton in an armbar. It's just a standard armbar. Standing up. Every wrestler uses in the first 60 seconds of every match. And Bobby Eaton gave up. He gave up in agony. A basic move like that, after 25 minutes of chaos and just mayhem, and the roof came off the place. Like you would have thought, Sting won the match with the Scorpion. Place went crazy. After the match, the rest of the Dangerous Alliance, they were yelling at Zbyszko. They were blaming him for the loss. A couple weeks later, Zbyszko ended up turning babyface and was fired from the Dangerous Alliance, and he turned babyface. And he didn't really do much after that. He retired. He became an announcer. He got very popular during the NWO days. He had a little feud going with Scott Hall. One of the biggest changes that took place around this time in WCW was that they hired Bill Watts to run the company. And by the next year, he was gone. There was a whole scandal. You could read about it online, but he had given an interview. I want to say it was with the Pro Wrestling Torch. I think it might have been with Wade Keller, and it was kind of fucked up. I mean, some of the things he said in the interview, to be honest with you, racially speaking, were fucked up. You could say, oh well, he was a product of his time. It doesn't matter. It was still fucked up what he said, but what was really messed up about it was he gave that interview to the Torch like 2 years before WCW hired him. And I don't exactly remember what happened, if it was published but nobody really remembered it and somebody brought it to someone's attention. I vaguely remember it might have been Mark Madden who mailed a copy of it to Hank Aaron, who was working for Turner Broadcasting at the time. I think that might have been what happened. I think Mark Madden snitched him out, sent Hank Aaron a copy of the interview. Again, there were some comments that Watts made that were inappropriate and it really made Hank Aaron very upset. And he brought it to the attention of the powers that be. And that was pretty much the end of Bill Watts in WCW. But, he got taken to task for comments he made in an interview that he gave long before WCW ever hired him. So that was the reason why he ended up leaving the company. And I'm not even passing judgment whether it was right or wrong for that to happen. I mean, you could look at the Hulk Hogan situation. Hulk Hogan got shit canned from WWE for making, stupid racial comments in a sex tape that was done 6, 7, 8 years earlier. Stuff like that comes out, though, and, you got to answer for it. It was a bad situation for WCW. They had to make a move, and they did. And so that was the end of Watts' run there. But as far as this match is concerned, this match was madness. Right? Isn't that what they say in that 300 movie with the Spartans, right? This is Sparta. This is War Games. It's a great match. Watch it. Watch this match. It's WrestleWar 92 on the WWE Network. Well worth going out of your way to see.